Hello. The Fintech Dictionary, or how to see through the bull. I want to give you a few tips on how to understand Fintech companies better, on how to tell apart the essence from the marketing. I'm Piotr Włodarek. I'm from Contomatic Banking API. I'm the CTO. I've been programming since '95, and I co-founded Contomatic in 2009. I'm obliged to say a few quick words about the company, and then I will move on to the actual presentation. So basically, Contomatic is API to read raw data from banks across the world. We are talking data like personal data for KYC or bank statements. Then there is a second layer of APIs which allows you to enrich banking data, for example, by labeling financial transactions. So Contomatic knows that the specific transaction is a healthcare spending or a salary or a welfare benefit. And then finally, there is a third layer of APIs which allows you to calculate high-level indicators based on banking data. And these serve as quality inputs for credit scoring models of our clients. Okay, let's move to the actual presentation. The first notion I want to tackle is big data. And whenever you read big data, think small data, because most companies who claim big data actually are talking thousands or millions of records, which is not big data. It is the scale that your Excel spreadsheet can support. A few quick tips here. Tend to avoid big data software solutions because these are heavy cows and you most likely don't need them. Then the second tip, contrary to popular belief, machine learning works fine with small to mid-sized data, so you do not necessarily need big data to use most machine learning algorithms successfully. And then finally, big data is big trouble with regard to security, performance, and so on. So please start with small data. For example, Contomatic reads on the order of 1 million financial transactions daily from banks across the world without using any big data solutions. Now the AI, whenever you read AI, think just an algorithm. Companies putting AI in their marketing materials most likely are simply using classic programming, classic algorithms, and there is not that much to it. So for example, Contomatic cleanses and normalizes banking data from over 120 banks using non-AI algorithms, and it works very well. Then the machine learning, the buzzword of the century. Most likely you will be right if you read it as if-else rules simply, because again, most companies putting machine learning in their copywriting are not doing anything fancy really. If you want to tell apart the companies, you may want to ask them very specific questions like, what specific ML algorithms are you using? What is the basic configuration? How do you clean the data? What are the layers? And then if faced with secrecy, you will know that there is very little essence to it. Because all the best machine learning algorithms are public, are available on the internet, on the Wikipedia, so there is really no reason to keep it secret. And if company claims to have invented a new machine learning algorithm, that's a red flag. Unless it's Google, Facebook, or IBM, that's very unlikely. So Contomatic actually uses machine learning, for example, for labeling financial transactions. We have not invented any new machine learning algorithm. We just try to use existing algorithms well. Then schemaless databases. So you might have heard that they are more flexible because you can put any shape, any data, any shape of the data there without defining the schema upfront. The problem with this is that those databases are not schemaless. They are offering implicit schema. Data always have some shape, and implicit schema means that you will have to infer it from the source code and from the data, and you will find it very hard to reason about such data and to change the shape of the data going forward. So it's a kind of technical debt. So at Contomatic, we use a classic relational database, a Postgres, and we enjoy full control over the shape of our data by employing explicit data schema. Now, NoSQL databases, a big hype in recent years. Every second startup uses NoSQL solutions. So they scale better, they are faster, but there is a trade-off to it. They give up on consistency guarantees. So instead of offering classic ACID transactions, they replace it with so-called eventual consistency, which basically means that, yes, eventually your data will be consistent. The problem with this is that between now and eventually, your program, your system must deal with inconsistent state of the world, which means you're going to write a lot of if statements to cover for this, which then means you will have a lot of bugs and the system will be very hard to reason about. So NoSQL has its place, but it's a kind of a C of the databases. It's a low-level solution. It gives programmer less guarantees and less power than classic relational databases. And you want to drop down to NoSQL databases only once you have identified a bottleneck which cannot be solved otherwise. So, you don't use a C language on a daily basis probably, so the same goes for NoSQL databases. So we at Contomatic, we skipped over this hype completely, and we use classic relational databases and enjoy data consistency guaranteed by ACID transactions. Now at Bitcoin, if you follow Bitcoin, you know it's almost $3,000 today. It's a very nice price recently. And if you read Bitcoin, you may think cash as information. By the way, it's just a dictionary. I don't mean that things on the left are necessarily somehow bad always. It's just my interpretation. So cash as information with all pros and cons that come with it. So pros being it's easy to store, easy to send across the ocean. Now cons being it's information, so it's easy to steal as well. It's hard to secure. And then the enterprise blockchains offered by Microsoft, IBM, Accenture, and whom not. It's really a distributed database repackaged in a new wording to capitalize on Bitcoin success and hype. It actually has all Bitcoin technical properties inverted. So whatever you heard about Bitcoin is basically not present in enterprise blockchains. And no, I am not missing the point. I'm tracking this since early 2011. So I feel I do understand the thing. So it's distributed database, but it tends to be centrally governed. It tends to be trust-based, and it's permissioned by design. So it's basically inverts all properties of Bitcoin. And if you ask me, it's a big overpromise. So in the end, I want to touch back on Contomatic a little bit. How is it different from competition? We price ourselves with reliability and conversion, funnel conversion. You have your customer acquisition cost, and you don't want your customer to be lost on a data fetching step because of some glitch in the API. And those data aggregation, banking data aggregation solutions are based mostly on screen scraping. So there is always some error rate there. And Contomatic prices itself in reliability and high conversion. Then at the speed, we are by far the fastest banking API in Europe. This is because, contrary to other companies, we do not use headless browsers, which are heavy cows. We recreate HTTP requests in a bare Java to do screen scraping. And this allows us to avoid much of the overhead. And then there is this value add that I mentioned already. banking data come enriched with labels, and then we have those high-level indicators, those factors that are valuable inputs for credit scoring models, highly predictive inputs for scoring models of our clients. And finally, the API is very composable and easy to integrate. So let's wrap up the FinTech dictionary of mine. Read big data as small data, read AI as an algorithm. I mean, to be closer to the truth. Read machine learning as if-else rules, read NoSQL as inconsistent, schemaless as implicit schema, Bitcoin as cashless information, enterprise blockchain as a kind of a boring distributed database, and Contomatic as a quality banking API. Thank you. So the question is, what machine learning algorithm are we using? So the most important thing we employ machine learning is transaction labeling, and we are using support vector machine with a linear kernel. We could have used millions of transactions as an input because we do have them, but for security reasons, we try to limit the set to tens of thousands of transactions cherry-picked from all data we have. Which countries we are in? So we are in Mexico, Brazil, several countries in Europe, including UK and Spain, and Russia. So we span across 3 continents right now. Our coverage of UK business banking. I'm not sure I fully understand the question. We support about 10 banks in UK, but we do not support SME accounts yet. PSD2, this is a must-go question when we are talking banking data aggregation. So sure, yes, we will switch to PSD2 APIs as soon as they are available. We are part of some working groups. We advise some banks on how to design their APIs. That being said, there is a big fear about fintech companies like ours that PSD2 banking APIs will be too simplistic and too limited, and it's a kind of a worry. So the biggest use case is lending companies use this data for credit scoring purposes. It's very predictive data. Banking data is the most predictive data you can have for as a lender or as a bank issuing credits, and that's the biggest use case. Another use case is PFM, personal finance management. So we only rely on target internet banking systems, and yes, if a bank has a downtime, then it is marked as down in Contomatic as well, and if it's changed, then we need about a few days to replace the old integration with a new one. So a few days to cover the new internet banking. Thank you.